My background was a combination of experiential play therapy and child-centered play therapy. I'm also a certified Gestalt therapist, so I had a Gestalt influence in there as well. And I always felt like something was missing. There was amazing healing that would happen in the room with kids. I couldn't deny that. But something in me in that room felt missing. I just always felt like play therapy could go to a whole other level, and I couldn't quite figure out how to get there. I didn't know what it was that was missing, but that's what I had been feeling for a couple years. I'd also been struggling with feelings of almost burnout setting in. I had a high capacity to work with trauma when I first started doing this work, and my caseload was incredibly challenging, let's put it that way. And I remember I would come home at the end of the days and I would lie in the bathtub for what felt like hours. I didn't know I was trying to regulate my nervous system, but that's what I was trying to do at the time, just so that I could manage the intensity that I was experiencing inside my body. And so I found myself wrestling with this experience of something's missing, and why do I have to be a punching bag in order for kids to heal? Why does my nervous system have to take a hit? Why does there have to be a toll on me and my life for kids to heal? Right, that was just a big question that I had. And what I realized over the next couple months was what I felt that night in the hospital room at 2 a.m. is what was missing for me in the playroom. There was something about my ability to attune to myself in such a way that I was able to attune to another being at such a profound level that we were actually able to affect change in our physiology. Such a profound sense of attunement. And so, of course, that got me curious. And then there were other influences in my life as well. But I think the next big piece of the puzzle is that once this experience happened, I was a high-risk pregnancy. And my pregnancy was no cakewalk after that. And then my birth was also, didn't go the way that I wanted it to go. And when Avery was born, she was born incredibly dysregulated. I mean, just go down the list of, right, high need infant. Just check, 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 check. So her nervous system was already messed with by the time she came into this world. And so my experience, this feeling of something missing, and then truly, I just wanted to help my baby. That's where this came from. I just wanted to help my baby. Is what sent me to the library to begin to read about the brain and to study about nervous systems. I remember lying in bed when Avery was 6 months old with brain videos, and she's next to me and just studying the brain. And this was before Synergetic Play Therapy came into focus, before I ever picked up a Dan Siegel book, before I ever picked up an Alan Shore book, before I ever studied anything in interpersonal neurobiology. Synergetic Play Therapy had already found its way. And it's been so cool now with all the research coming out, and what it's doing is it's validating the intuitive process in the playroom. So this is the first step in us being able to understand what's happening with the child, right? Our willingness to take that deep breath, our willingness and our courage to be able to begin to use our bodies, to begin to use this fabulous gift that we've been giving, so that we can attune to ourselves first, so that then we can become curious about whether or not our client is having the same experience. So we need to learn about this tool today. I said in classes, I don't recall if I said it in the last class, but I find it so interesting as play therapists that we spend a lot of time studying things like how to facilitate sand and how to facilitate art and how to facilitate the bot bag. And we take these classes on different interventions and techniques and what do we do when a child does this. But how many classes do we take on actually understanding the most important tool in the playroom? None. Okay? So today we're going to take that course. We're going to begin that. Everything that you need to facilitate that process is right there in the moment between you and the child. And it takes having a willingness to use this, right, as the medium, if you will. And the toys are in the room to help facilitate the information coming to life so that then you can then feel it. So let's move a little bit now into regulation. We talked a lot about dysregulation last time, but we didn't spend a lot of time talking about regulation. So the place that I want to start is what regulation is and what regulation is not, because we need to bust a couple myths about regulation so that we know exactly what we're up to and we know what the goal is and what we're trying to do. So one of the really big myths out there with regulation is that regulation means calm. Okay, now, I know you probably don't have your sheets with you, but if you can make a note somewhere to go back and look at your nervous system handout, the 3 columns, you'll notice the word calm is nowhere to be found under the description of what a regulated nervous system looks like. The word poised is on there. The word grounded is on there, but not the word calm. So we tend to think of regulation as something that sort of like looks like this. Right? This sort of like peaceful, calm, sort of serene state. That's how we tend to think of regulation, right? I'm going to go into meditation now so that I can regulate, okay? Now, I'm not saying that can't be a part of regulation, but that's not regulation from a synergetic perspective. From a synergetic perspective, regulation is a moment of mindfulness. It's a moment when you are attached or connected to yourself. So I'm going to say that again. From a synergetic perspective, regulation occurs in a moment of mindfulness. Right? It occurs in a moment when you are connected to yourself. The language we use in SPT is you are attached to yourself. And from that definition, what it means is that I can actually be regulated in any emotional state. What I find is that the same thing that we're trying to do in the playroom with children, meaning orient them to their truth, right? Help them discover their authentic self. Right? It's what we're trying to do with you in this teaching. Can you orient, right, to your own truth in any given moment? Can you show up? Can you name what you need to name? Can you trust yourself? Can you follow your own intuitive process? Right? That's what we're trying to uncover with you. And we're trying to also help that emerge in the child. Can we do the same thing with the parents? Because what I find is that most parents at some point along the way get lost. For you parents in the room, raise your hand if you have ever felt lost as a parent. Right? We have so many shoulds, and there are so many cultural messages about what parenting should look like, how it's supposed to go, what's good, what's bad, what's right, what's wrong, that it is so easy to lose the inner voice. And yet it's the inner voice that's actually the guide to navigate the parenting moment or whatever needs to happen right there. So when I'm working with parents, I am doing everything I can to guide the parent back to their own internal knowing and trusting of what needs to happen in a moment. Now, that doesn't mean that sometimes parents don't need education or ideas about what that could be, because if we don't have options, if we've never been taught how to connect with our child before, if that's just a foreign concept, right? Or our version of connecting is, let's just sit next to each other and watch television, and I don't really know how to do this intimacy thing right with a kid because no one's ever modeled it to me. I may have to show them as an option, right? But we are constantly helping the parent come back to themselves. Come back, come back, come back. Because the moment they sync up and they give them permission to be themselves, guess what they do to their kid? They give their kid permission to be themselves. Can you feel where I'm going with this? Let's keep tying all this together. Let's go back to attachment. What are you hearing me say with attachment? What's the SPT addition?
All about perception.
It's all about perception.
It can change moment to moment in a person.
Yes, so thank you. So we didn't actually say that, but yes, your attachment style can actually change moment to moment.
This really has nothing to do with the other. It has all to do with you.
At the end of ultimately, but again, we can't deny that there's influence, right? An infant who cannot feed itself,
Right, of course.
if there's a caregiver that's not providing that infant food, absolutely there's a potential challenging perception attached to that experience. But ultimately what happens still in that is the question is the child able to attach to self or not? Right? Yes?
So when developmentally can children start to attach to self?
So,
That happen in the first 18 months of life?
oh, totally. Absolutely. Totally. Babies are lying in the crib. Right? There I am.
We're born with the ability to attach to ourselves.
Absolutely. Part of our social wiring in the brain. But
And we have to learn.
and we have to learn how. We have to learn how, which is why we need another nervous system. We seek out another nervous system so that we can begin to pattern our nervous system off of someone else's nervous system. Okay? So let's imagine this. So let's say Avery's an infant, and let's say Avery is having a challenging time. Okay, let's say her stomach really hurts or something like that, right? She's having a challenging time. If I go over to Avery and I pick her up, actually, let's say she's lying there and she's like, "Ah," right? She's in a dysregulated state, sympathetic activation. She's perceiving a challenge. She thinks she can do something about it, and therefore she is screaming at the top of her lungs. Right? Brilliant design. Okay? So she's letting me know that there's a need. I come over and I look at her and I go, there. It's going to be all right. What is she going to do?
Scream louder.
Why? Okay. How often do we do this in the playroom? Where the child is in a state of activation and we don't jump in there and get into that attuned place with them, and we stay slightly removed from the intensity of their activation. And then the child is like, you are so not being authentic. You are so not being authentic. You are so not being congruent. So I'm going to crank this up a notch until you freaking show up with me. Right? So we see that little dynamic play out. Right? So I go over, let's say I'm attuned, and I pick her up. Right? And immediately, what do I begin to feel in my system? Her system. The setup. If I have a screaming baby in my arms, am I going to feel calm inside?
No.
No. Is my heart rate going to be going like this? Am I going to feel anxious? Am I going to feel agitated? Yes. everything that's happening inside her nervous system, right? Our nervous systems are saying, hello, right? So the process of helping her discover herself in this is that I first need to join her, and she needs to be able to look in a mirror. So if you look at a attuned caregiver with an infant that's in distress, what immediately happens to their face?
Oh.
They make the same face that the baby's making. They literally like, ah, right? And the baby looks in a mirror, and their mirror neuron system fires, and they feel felt, right? So here we are. We're now attuned. Baby knows, right? Avery knows, mom's with me. I can see it in her face, right? I can feel her. She's having an authentic response. She's congruent. She's with me. At which point now, what do I begin to do? Regulate. To hear the process in the playroom, it's the same dang process, right? So I want you just to notice what happens in your body. What do you notice? What do you feel inside?
Release.
Feel it really, where do you feel it in your body? Uh-huh. What else do you notice?
The bigger one is a little bit overwhelming.
This one's a little more overwhelming for you? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Are you focusing up here or down here? The flow? So for some of you, you have an experience of release, and for some of you, you have an experience of anxiety. Right? You went the other way?
Yeah, my breath slowed down with the big one.
Uh-huh. My point is, do you feel something? Mm-hmm. Because all you're doing is watching me play with a funnel and some sand. Right? But your whole system is actually activated as you're watching me play. And the reason why is because we're energetic beings. Right? This is energetic. There's a flow to it. The flow of your own nervous system, right? The energy of your own nervous system is going to attempt to get in tune with this. It's no different than going to a beach. Why, after being at a beach for 24 hours, you sync up, right? There's a rhythm that you start to, you can't help it. You can't go to the beach and not feel something on some level. The same thing is true with the sand. You cannot sit next to a sand tray with a child playing in the sand and not feel something in your body unless you're not allowing that information to come into conscious awareness, which we've talked about at length in this course, right? So you're going to feel this, again, whether you like it or not.